Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another article review video for The Lord of the Rings the card game, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. My name is Mitch, and I am the 10th Nazgul. Joining me, as always, is Matthew.
Hello everyone.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at the release article for the third adventure pack of the upcoming Ringmaker cycle of adventure packs. This is The Trouble in Tharbad. This adventure pack introduces a new scenario following in the footsteps of the Dunland Trap and the Three Trials. So after having a couple nasty encounters with angry militant bands of Dunlendings, after fighting and defeating ferocious guardian spirits, claiming some keys, and ultimately recovering the antlered crown, our heroes are now in search of a dwarf named Nalir, who might just possess some information said to be useful against Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor. So, this scenario reflects our heroes' latest attempts to continue to help the White Wizard Saruman, leader of the White Council. And this article explains that what we can expect is to battle orcs, to slip through abandoned streets, and additionally to elude spies that have taken an interest in this dwarf Nalir. And, just as we've seen with so many other objective allies, it's going to be of the utmost importance that we keep this dwarf alive. Overall, this was a pretty brief article. It was a quick little introduction to this quest. It's basically going to be an escort mission, keeping an ally alive. We've got to fight off spies that are trying to kill him. We've got to deal with a little bit of the time keyword working against us. As with so many other scenarios, we're once again facing off against hordes of orcs, and ultimately, presuming we can keep Nalir alive, hopefully he'll have some useful information to help us in our continued efforts against the Dark Lord.
Yeah, this certainly sounds like it'll be an interesting quest. We haven't had too many set in a cityscape. Certainly there was the Steward's Fear from the Against the Shadow cycle. Here we're in an ancient ruined city. I'll note that I particularly like the art of the orc that's in the little card fan here. He doesn't look very orcish because he's a spy, so that's sort of fun. Looks like we'll be heading to some taverns, because in the hazy quest card text here, we can see that we're making the empty mug the active location. And looking at Nalir's art here, he's leaning against a cask, so maybe our heroes can get drunk or something in this quest. But yeah, I always like to fight different sorts of enemies, which maybe we won't have here, but spies could be fun. Certainly different locations can help sort of freshen up the quest from just traipsing through a forest or some other wide, expansive area in Middle-earth. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one.
Sure, it kind of reminds me of a little bit of a return to Heirs of Numenor. The art style, just from the few cards we've seen, to me screams Peril and Pelargir. So, as the article wasn't overly forthcoming with what we can expect, hopefully the developers have some sort of interesting mechanics to introduce to us. As we can clearly see in that card fan, Nalir has a forced effect where at the beginning of the refresh phase, the player controlling him has to raise their threat by 1 for each player in the game, which over time can end up being pretty considerable. It makes me think of the version of Gollum that we saw in Return to Mirkwood, except this time it has a little bit of built-in scaling, so I remember a lot of solo players complaining back in the day that their threat climbed just way too quickly. I think building in a little bit of scaling is all in all reflective of our developers maturing a little bit, kind of refining the way that this game functions, and I'm sure overall this is gonna hopefully be yet another good example of a tight, well-functioning, well-thought-out scenario. I keep saying we don't know much, we don't know what to expect, apart from some sort of escort mission, but I think that something important to consider is that the LOTR objective ally himself has the dwarf trait, so he counts as one dwarf character that the players control. So if you're running Dane Ironfoot, he gets an additional point of willpower, bringing him up to an impressive 1. He'll have 2 attack strength, and if you're running a multitude of effects that rely on the number of dwarf characters that you control, then LOTR greatly expedites the rate at which you'll hit 5. So Thorin Oakenshield is generating additional resources for you. Glowin, when you put him into play, he's either transferring resources or refunding resources. This certainly feeds into a multitude of different effects, and as the article goes on to explain that some of the traits we saw in the core set and Shadows of Mirkwood cycle that were relatively underdeveloped are finally going to be getting some attention, it's kind of nice to see the dwarf trait return. I might be a little biased in my fondness for the dwarves, but it feels like we've left them alone for a little while, and I like them getting some attention again too.
So the article lets us know that this adventure pack will contain a new Sylvan hero. We'll also get more support cards for the Sylvan trait. It mentions we'll get 6 total cards of the 10 that interact with the Sylvan synergy. Gondor will also get some love in this adventure pack. We'll see the return of the Doomed X keyword, and it sounds like we'll also be getting a secrecy card in this pack. So a smattering of traits, getting a little bit of love in this pack, so hopefully some good stuff to look forward to.
Personally, I'm very excited to hear that we've got another Sylvan hero on the way. As we saw in the Black Riders Saga expansion, it certainly doesn't take much nowadays for 2 or 3 heroes to start being extraordinarily powerful together. Sam, Pippin, and Merry made a very powerful trio. We saw Celeborn unveiled as our new hero for the Dunland Trap, so maybe once we see this hero, maybe in another adventure pack or 2, we'll start to have a pretty fully fleshed out Sylvan deck. Seeing 6 player cards, it's hard to imagine that it's going to take long before we get something pretty powerful, up and running, and in very short order. I'm also looking forward to seeing new Gondor cards. Throughout the Against the Shadow cycle, we certainly saw some development of that Gondor trait, but I'm not sure it's even now at the level players were hoping it would be, so a little bit more attention certainly can't go wrong, and seeing additional cards trying to make use of that doomed keyword, trying to use the secrecy mechanic, I'm just looking forward to seeing all of these different things. So we don't really know what to expect from this adventure pack, but I've got high hopes.
While we only get 1 card spoiled in this article, unlike the 2 or 3 spoiled in the previous 2 announcement articles for the APs in this cycle, man, is it one I've been waiting for a long time. It is the Lord of the Eagles himself, Gwaihir. He is a tactics ally, and he costs 5 resources. He has 2 willpower, 3 attack strength, 1 defense strength, and 4 hit points. He is a creature and an eagle, and he cannot have restricted attachments. His response reads, after Gwaihir enters play, search your discard pile for an eagle ally and put it into play under your control. At the end of the round, if that ally is still in play, add it to your hand. So, we've known that a Gwaihir card in some form was coming for quite a while. I was certainly hoping for him to be a hero in the second Hobbit Saga expansion. Alas, he was not, and we finally get the ally version. His art was spoiled a long time ago. I don't remember what industrious community member found it, but we've seen the art before. With that said, I'm very excited to see him finally appear in the card game. He might give some resurgence to Eagle decks. He certainly has a hefty cost, but given his stats, it's probably worth it. As the article mentions, 2 willpower for tactics is definitely a powerful contribution, even if it is a bit expensive. I think the one drawback, besides perhaps the hefty 5 cost, is that you have to search your discard pile for an Eagle ally. Sadly, you can't search your deck. With that said, a lot of the Eagles leave play, Vassal of the Windlord, Winged Guardian, if they die for whatever reason, and he's a way to bring them back. I think the most potent combo would be having Eagles of the Misty Mountains on the table, because for every Eagle that leaves play, they get stacked under Eagles of the Misty Mountain. It just gets beefier and beefier. So yeah, I just absolutely cannot wait to try an Eagle deck. Again, it's been a very long time to try out Gwaihir, and he might even make it in a non-Eagle deck of mine from time to time, just because he's such a cool character, and again, having 2 willpower and 3 attack is always nice.
I definitely think that this could potentially be a powerful ally. That cost does make me a little bit hesitant to think about running him, but at the same time, with this character, I think Horn of Gondor is almost mandatory. You are guaranteed that, presuming you can fetch an Eagle back into play, it will be leaving play at the end of the round, so you're going to be gaining 1 resource back, regardless of what happens to Gwaihir. Certainly in our videos, you've managed to get Landroval into play, so I think it is pretty reasonable that you can invest those resources, and especially considering he's got some significant willpower attached to him, he can really help a tactics deck with what they struggle with the most, which is questing. That 3 attack power is nothing to sneeze at. He's got a great pool of hit points, even if his defense isn't stellar. And as you mentioned, the Eagles of the Misty Mountains, it seems like when I'm running an Eagles deck, all too often I either get a Vassal of the Windlord or Winged Guardian into play in the early game, and it ends up getting killed before I can manage to invest in an Eagles of the Misty Mountains. So this is a little bit of a corrective effect. It can retrieve that ally from my discard pile, get it back into play, and then get it appropriately under the Eagles of the Misty Mountains. I think it's a little bit of a shame that if you retrieve, say, a Vassal of the Windlord, if it does its attack, since it's not in play at the end of the round, it ends up being discarded again, it's going to end up back in your discard pile instead of back in your hand. So Gwaihir it's not an incredible ability, but it's certainly got a pretty kick-ass potential. I think that we could see the Eagles being a very welcome addition to our Mono Tactics Rohan deck. So Hama could recycle the Eagles Are Coming to get Gwaihir into your hand as quickly as possible, to get a discardable Eagle onto the table, and provide some fodder for Gwaihir's response. Eomer would get an attack boost when Eagles leave play. If you're benefiting from Prince Imrahil or Valiant Sacrifice, that also works very, very well with this. Really, the only kind of thing to look out for is that this works against effects like Sylvan Refugee, but certainly from what we've seen, the Eagles are all about leaving play. The Sylvan deck is supposed to be all about leaving play and exiting play, so maybe we'll end up seeing some Sylvan and Eagles synergy overlap, but I think my absolute personal favorite use for Gwaihir is putting Descendant of Thorondor into play. So maybe you end up playing it, it enters play, deals damage, you chump block with it, it leaves play, deals damage, Gwaihir hits the table, it re-enters play, ends up exiting play, all sorts of direct damage on the table, provided that you can either control your threat or otherwise pin enemies in the staging area.
One other minor use, I think, for Gwaihir is back in the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, in A Journey to Nazgul in particular, and Shadows of Mirkwood, there were those annoying bats and Mirkwood flock that could only be attacked by an eagle character or those with ranged. And so he's another way that you can deal with that, and he'll even pull back another eagle to help you defend or attack those Black Forest bats or Mirkwood flock. So certainly, again, I've been waiting for this character for a long, long time, and I couldn't be more excited that we'll be seeing him soon.
Sure. In the same vein, along what you were talking about, he's a creature for a frightened beast during Nightmare Conflict at the Carrack. Even though he's unique, I think the players can take advantage of potentially including multiple copies of him in their deck, not only so that they can draw him quickly during an opportune moment, but because putting more than one copy into play, chump blocking him off, can all serve to help fuel an Eagles of the Misty Mountains. So I think he's very powerful. I like that his ability works extraordinarily well, particularly in the early game, perhaps, with sneak attack, so that he can do some attacking, questing, or defending. You can have an Eagle ally do some questing, attacking, defending, whatever it happens to be. You benefit from his response, and then maybe in the later game, if resources aren't as much of a problem, you can use something like the tactics-friendly Born Aloft to have Gwaihir bouncing in and out of play, to have these Eagles bouncing in and out of play. So, all in all, I'm just very excited to see this character.
I think my final thought is he is expensive, and so perhaps if you don't draw him early, but you do get a copy of Radagast on the table on the first or second turn, Radagast, of course, can not only help pay for creature allies, he can also heal creature allies. So either way, there's a host of possibilities for this hero, and as I keep mentioning, I really cannot wait to play with him.
As my closing thought, I will add that if you are concerned about that hefty resource investment, keep in mind you're certainly welcome to try to take advantage of clever effects like Elfstone or Vilya to essentially cheat him into play, if you want to view it like that, but overall, I think he's got great potential. I hope this is far from the only Eagle ally that we see throughout the Ringmaker cycle. And, as I consistently mention in almost every video, I'm always excited to see what kind of clever new effects the developers come up with, and I'm always excited to see what's new in this living card game.
So this adventure pack is scheduled to arrive late in the second quarter of 2014. I would wager June, so not too long to wait for Gwaihir to enter our decks, as well as this new Sylvan hero.
Well, I suppose that brings this quick video to a close, so as always, thank you all for checking out yet another production for the Lord of the Rings the card game. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, spread the viral goodness around the internet, subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already, and feel free to leave a comment below. What are your thoughts about the setting for this adventure? So, taking place in Tharbad, certainly not a locale that was covered in The Lord of the Rings, but that certainly made an appearance in the appendices. What are your thoughts about bringing back some of our other traits? And particularly, what do you think about Gwaihir? What hero combinations are you excited about using? What card synergy are you anticipating or excited for? So, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.